welcome to Magical Journey. And today we have a very special topic that we're going to do. But before we get started with that, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping here. So, first of all, if you are new to Magical Journey and all of those things tied to me, social media and so forth, do me a favor and join me on magicaljourney.com for all of my social media links. Also, you can find out ways of contacting me, and you can also see some guest appearances that I've done on other shows that you won't see anywhere else. And I believe I will have the link to my merch up on the site soon. So that's always a good plus. So definitely check it out, magicaljourney.com. Along with magicaljourney.com, you can also find my links on my link tree, but you can also find Magical Journey, the group on Facebook, where you can find out not only what's being posted currently on this channel, but you can also find out things like articles and photos related to some of the topics that we cover. And you can also meet some of my supporters who are really, really cool and really nice people to hang out with. There's also a page for Magical Journey, which basically just gives you a rundown of the shows that are being currently posted and that are currently available for you to view. And there's also a page for the Paranormal Files. Very important. That's my Thursday drop, and that is where I go in and I discuss several things, the paranormal that I am currently researching or have researched in the past, and I kind of spew out some information on those things. Along with that, you can also catch me on X and, at least for a time being, TikTok. If you're wondering why this strange background today, I am actually at a hotel in North Alabama for work this week. So I'm coming to you from Alabama. Now, this week, today's show is a little different than normal. I am going to be talking about a very interesting subject that I've been wanting to do a show on since I've started the podcast, basically. And like I said, it's very different, but yet it's not. It does not necessarily have a paranormal twist to it, but there is potential for it being linked to the paranormal, depending on who you jive with and so forth. So today we're going to talk about one of the big mysteries of the Appalachian Mountains, Appalachia, and one of the top 5 missing person cases of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So who are we talking about? Trenny Lynn Gibson, also known as Teresa Lynn Gibson, who disappeared literally without a trace on October the 8th, 1976. She was very excited about going on a trip with her class. Her horticultural class was getting a chance to go to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park to go on a hike to do some looking at the flora and fauna of the park there. And during October, the early part of October, it's absolutely beautiful up that way. They were going to be hiking Andrews Bald, which was a very scenic high elevation and grasslands up by near what was Klingman's Dome at that time. So Trenny uh, went on the hike with the other 40 with the 40 students that were with her. Um, but when it was time for them to return to the bus, Trenny literally was nowhere to be found. Um, the searches were conducted for the missing 16-year-old. She was 16 at the time. Uh, but 5 decades later, we still have no idea what happened to Trenny Gibson. So Trenny was born August the 17th, 1960, to Robert and Hope Gibson. Some news outlets incorrectly reported her name was Teresa, but her given name was Trenny. That's important. I did not realize that until just then. There was a mistake in the original Park Service report. Um, she has some siblings too, a brother and a sister. Actually, she had two brothers and two sisters. Um, so, and actually, Robert Gibson, there's a lot of Roberts in this story, just a heads up. Robert Gibson Jr., or Bob, as they were called him, was her oldest brother. The youngest of the children was Miracle, who was 5 years old when Trini came up missing. And then she had two sisters. And right this minute, I could not tell you their names. I just can't remember. Trini really liked to listen to Jethro Tull and hang out and just be kind of kind to her friends and so forth. Kim Ponce, who was a friend of Trini's from school, said that she worked at a cafeteria in the mall. It was Morrison's Cafeteria, I believe was the name of it, in addition to attending school. And she was very careful with her earnings and put most of her money in a savings account because she wanted to buy a car. And she also wanted to go to college. She was interested in landscaping architecture and hoped one day to study at the University of Tennessee to get her degree there. Trini was not a big girl. Okay, she was at 16 in 1976. She was like 5'3" and 115 pounds. So she was a tiny little waif, actually. And I really mention this because it may have played an important part in her disappearance. If she was indeed abducted or perhaps even attacked by a predator, yeah, being tiny would definitely play into that a lot. Overall, Trendy seemed to be a pretty normal teenager for the time. She was not like she was cool or whatever, but she was not really remarkable. She was attractive, but she wasn't like beautiful. She was intelligent, but she wasn't like a genius by no means. So overall, she was not like, there wasn't anything like outstandingly remarkable about her. She was pretty normal in that sense. She was a cute kid, but yeah. The In October 1976, though, like her life, everything came to an abrupt halt. Um, so, in order to understand the mystery better, it's important to understand the geography of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, sometimes known as Smokies to the locals. Okay. The park spans two states, Tennessee and North Carolina, and it straddles the border between the two the two running southwest to northwest. It encompasses a vast 522,419 acres, a total of 816.28 square miles. So it's kind of a vast area. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park is well known for its waterfalls, mountains, um, biodiversity. It's very biodiverse, and its forest. The Appalachian Trail also passes through the Smokies um, on its path from Georgia to Maine. The park has been designated as um, UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's and it's an international biosphere reservation. There's so many species of plants and animals in this park. It's unbelievable. Um, all this to, to say that the area is by and large a vast, untamed wilderness. It is very vast, very untamed. There's a lot of area through there that has just never been touched by man. Estimates claim that the park is almost 95% forest, making any search and rescue attempts very difficult because the thick trees and hazardous terrain. And by hazardous terrain, I mean there's places where it just goes choop choop. It's like it's crazy. Um, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is potentially very dangerous. In 2022, it was ranked number 5 in the list titled America's Deadliest National Parks. So, number 5, with a total of 113 deaths in the park from 2007 to 2021. According to the list, the most common cause of death was motor vehicle crashes. So, people not driving good. Park officials have also stated they average about 100 search and rescues each year. So about 100 people come up missing every year in that park. Um, in 2022, they recorded 11 deaths in the park. So yeah, it's kind of bad there in some ways. You don't want to just go up and around there, okay? Uh, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from visiting the park. I'm just telling you it's not a place to just go romping through haphazardly with just throwing caution to the wind. So on the day of the disappearance, Friday, October the 8th, 1976, um, the students from Beard High School in Knoxville, Tennessee, were headed to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park to see Kleeman's Dome and hike to Andrews Bald. A bald is an area of high elevation and grasslands. So this was kind of like a meadow in a way, a high altitude meadow. Um, but the students did not know where they were going until they got on the bus. The planned hike was around 3.6 miles round trip, and it's generally accepted to be a moderate hike, so it's not over the top steep or crazy, and it's not easy either. It's kind of in the middle. At the time, Trenny was 16 years old, again, a sophomore, taking a horticulture class taught by Mr. Dunlap. Now, Dunlap was taking approximately 40 students on a field trip on Friday during poor weather, and it was dark and rainy. And he was the only adult on this trip. Originally, Trenny's mom was going to be a chaperone, but she had to back out because she didn't have anybody to take care of her 6-year-old child. So Mr. Dunlap was pretty much it. He was on his own. It was a one-man band. The bus driver had to stay with the bus, so he was not going to be able to go on the hike with them. Once the bus arrived at Cleveland's Dome parking lot, the students were greeted by the famous Cleveland's Dome Observatory Tower. Now, this is a concrete trail leading up to this tower. It's an observation tower. Um, it's the highest point. The tower is the highest point in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and it provides a 360-degree view. It's absolutely stunning up there. I've been there, and you can see forever. It literally, it's everywhere. It's mountains everywhere. And, and even when the weather is not so great, it's beautiful up there. Before the students were let off the bus, they were given instructions for the trip. Hike to Andrews Ball, observe the plants and trees, be back at the bus no later than 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay, because they were in Eastern Tennessee. The students were also told not to go off of any other trails and to go any further than Andrews Ball. So Andrews Ball, that's it. That's as far as you're going. Once the teenagers confirmed that they understood the rules, they were sent off to do the thing and do their hike, right? Several students reported seeing and walking with Trenny during the hike to Andrews Ball, okay? Despite the chilly weather, everyone seemed to be having a good time. It was chilly, it was rainy, it was kind of cold, just icky day, but they were digging it. Trenny hiked all the way to the Balls with a classmate she sat on the bus with. Now, this classmate was another Robert Simpson. This is very important. Remember him because he plays a big part in this story. But so she hiked up to the Bald with Robert Simpson, but coming down, she kind of left him behind. So according to Robert's story, he supposedly decided he was going to go tracking a bear. And Trenny was like, yeah, no, you're crazy. I'm out. Bye. See ya. So she took off without him. Another group of students that was on the trail reported seeing Trenny on their way back. She joined them for a little bit, but when they sat down because they were tired, one of the kids was actually having problems breathing because he had asthma, so they sat down to let him rest. She decided she wanted to go on. She wanted to be at the bus. The group was about a half to 3/4 of a mile away from the parking area at this point. So once Trini left the group she'd been walking with, no one saw her again. That was around 3 p.m. Some of the students looked around for her for any side trails that she may have gone down, but there was no signs of her. Figuring that she likely would be at the bus waiting for them, they continued on their way back to the parking lot. By 3:40 p.m., 10 minutes after the deadline to return to the bus, people noticed that Trini was nowhere. She was not at the bus. She was nowhere to be found. Mr. Dunlap and other students made the hike back to Andrews Ball in search of her, but they found nothing. The National Park Service was contacted at 4:30 p.m. to report Trini missing. So let's back up a little bit. So at one point, one of the students that was in the group that sat down and Trini decided she was going to go ahead. One of the students said that they thought they saw Trini going down the trail She turned at one point and looked off to the side and kind of crouched down a little bit, as if she was looking at something off to the side. But then the girl just kind of lost track of Trini. She really didn't see where she went to. She wasn't sure whenever they got down to the area where she thought she saw Trini at. It was kind of like not a place that you would want to walk in. So instead of her trying to walk around, see if maybe Trini went to the bathroom or was looking at something off the trail, she just kind of decided to keep walking. The authorities were quick to take Trini's disappearance seriously and immediately headed to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park to start the search, uh, bringing along many tools to help, including scent dogs and helicopters. Dwight McCarter, a retired ranger and expert tracker who worked on Trini's case, said, "For some reason, she got ahead of the group coming back and wasn't at the bus at the Dome parking lot." That was all of the information police had when they started looking for Trini. Unfortunately, the weather did not help the situation. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Dwight McCarter, I believe, was also, because there was somebody who worked on Trini's case, who also worked on the Dennis Martin case, and I want to say it was McCarter that was the person. I could be wrong. Um, The rainy, foggy weather of the Smokies made the search for Trini a difficult one. Helicopters were unable to be sent out to the search until the afternoon when the weather had cleared up a bit. All the same, they didn't spot any sign of Trini. Authorities brought in search and tracking dogs in order to track Trini's scent. McCarter, the expert tracker, said in a television interview, 3 of the dog teams followed her to the Appalachian Trail and followed her around Cleveland's Dome Tower. Now, the dog said that she walked right by this tower with all these people, and the dog said she came out on this road about a mile away. Now, that was an interview he gave to WBIR Channel 10. It seems, though, that no one at the tower noticed Trini walking around down below. It was possible that they didn't see her, but it's also possible that she was trying to stay out of sight. The scent trail ended up along a roadside, which perhaps indicated that she made it to the road and then had been picked up by someone, or maybe even that she had forcibly been dragged out to the road. No one can say for sure. Now, here's where things get a little weird as far as stuff that they found, evidence that they found. Um, so, off to the side over there where Trini was reported to have kind of like looked off to the side and kind of did the thing like she was looking for someone or something. Some cigarette butts and a partially full beer can was found near the spot where Trini disappeared at the forest, that place where she was looking out at. More of the butts, the same brands, were found near the road where the scent dogs lost the trail. It's not clear if these items are related to Trini's disappearance or if they are still being kept in evidence. I've heard a couple of things. I heard that um, the cigarette butts and the beer can was kept and handed over to one of the sheriffs or whatever, who said that's nothing and kind of tossed it to the side, and they were discarded. Um, then I've heard that no, they were actually kept. Trini left some things behind. that are very curious too. She left her purse, her bank book, makeup, clothing, and cash behind. There was also $1,000 in her bank account, which was never withdrawn. If Trini had been planning to run away, she would have taken some of the items with her, and especially the money, right? Um, One of Trini's belongings, a comb, which this comb was a big deal for her. She carried this comb everywhere. Um, was located in um, Robert Simpson's car, actually. Bob, her brother Bob, is the one who noticed it. And he was like, what are you doing with Trini's comb? And Bob basically said, well, she she gave it to me to hold on to. Um, Trini had sat next to um, Robert Simpson on the bus on the way there. Robert was a close friend of her older brother Bob. Uh, and on the bus ride to Cleveland's Dome parking lot, um, they sat together. They had a good time. They talked. They laughed. Whatever. Um, Trini and Robert Simpson had hung out together. They had gone places together. Robert had a car. They had gone to the mall together and so forth before. So it wasn't like they weren't friends. They were friends actually. Um, Police concluded that Trini had given this comb uh, to Robert to hold on to until the end of the field trip. So they didn't really like follow up on that whatsoever. Um, Now, one of the things that is stranger is that Trini had a star sapphire pendant and ring. They were both gifts given to her for birthday and Christmas presents. The pendant and ring were discovered in the possession of a girl from Beaver, Beaventer, Bearden. Why do I keep wanting to call it Beaverton? Bearden High School. Um, this girl could not explain how she got it. So one of the stories that I heard was that Trini was in the bathroom and she handed the jewelry off to one of the girls to keep for her so she wouldn't lose it. That's supposedly um, the story. So now let's go back a little further back to an incident that happened previous to this. Um, Trini's parents, Robert and Hope Gibson, reported that there had been an incident a few years earlier, actually it was a year before, in which another student from Bearden High School had attempted to break in to the Gibson home. Hope shot this student in the foot because he was trying to come through Trini's window. So Calvin Bowman, a young black guy who went to school with Trini, he was friends with her brother Robert, older brother Robert. Um, Apparently, he was intoxicated one night. He was hanging outside the window, the yard, um, and he was hollering out for Bob. And then, for whatever reason, he tried to go through Trini's window. Well, Calvin had told another investigator at one point too that yeah, Trini had actually left her window open for him several times in the past, and he had gone through that window several times in the past to hook up with her, basically, because apparently Trini had a thing for African American boys. So Calvin got shot in the foot by Mrs. Gibson. wound up going to the hospital to get that taken care of. When Calvin Bowman was in the courtroom, he made threats against Trenny, saying he would harm her once he got out of juvenile detention. The student was back at high school at the time of the field trip, uh, making the family concerned that maybe he would do something to Trenny. Um, However, the principal determined that Calvin Bowman was definitely in school that day, in class, and he didn't even have a car, so following the bus was not really an option. And besides, so remember, if we go back, um, the students did not know where they were going to until actually they had boarded the bus, and Mr. Dunlap specifically did not want them to know where they were going, because he didn't want people following them, and he wanted it to be a surprise for them, which it was a surprise. And up until the point where Trini disappeared and it all kind of went to crap, it was a really pleasant surprise. So at some point, the FBI was called in to assist the search. They interviewed students from Bearden High School, hoping to hear or learn something that might guide them toward where the 16-year-old gone. According to some sources, many of the students thought that Trinity might have ran off with somebody, although they were not sure who she could have ran off with. Now, keep in mind, again, Trini didn't know where they were going. Actually, if you really want to know, Trini wasn't even sure that the trip was even going to be on still when she got to the school because of the weather. So at first, she didn't even know if there was still a trip to be had. And then, of course, she found out that, yeah, the trip was going on still. So Kim Ponce, who was a friend of Trinity's, says she remembered coming to school that Monday and finding out that she was missing. The desk where Trinity once sat apparently remained empty for some time. None of the teachers or the students knew if she would ever return or not. People also questioned why there was only one adult chaperone for a field trip of about 40 students. So Dunlap was also kind of suspected for a bit, because that was kind of fishy. Extensive searches in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park continued until the end of October 1976. The Gibsons tried to keep their family together after Trinity's disappearance, but ultimately the parents wound up getting divorced because of the big mess that left them. So here are some theories of what may have happened with Trini, and these are ideas that people have tossed around. We don't really have any proof or clues one way or the other what really happened to Trini. There's several plausible theories about what happened to Trini on the trail. As in always with cases like this, there are some that suggest outlandish things like alien abduction or Bigfoot, David Pilates or whatever his name is, with his missing 411 or whatever, always turning it into some paranormal event. But this was not really the case with this, we don't think. So let's look at some of the more plausible ideas. Many believe that Trini was abducted while at the park. Some even suggest that she was somehow been captured and held against her will in the observation dome while searchers were looking below for her. The dome was not searched at the time. Another abduction theory is that she was forcibly taken and dragged through the forest to the road where the scent dogs lost her trail. Because Trini was so small in stature, it's believed that she could have easily been carried off. True story, she was a tiny little thing, easily could have been carried off. Um, there's some evidence to support this theory, actually. Remember the cigarette butts that were found near where Trini was thought to have gone into the woods with more of the same brand found along the road where the search dogs had lost her scent there at the dome, right? Some people suggest this indicates there was an abductor who grabbed her from the trail and took her to the road where there was a car waiting to take her away. Very plausible. There's a theory that Planet Trini ran away. Now, before I even get into this, let me just say Trini lived in where? Knoxville, Tennessee, where there's all these buses, planes, trains. There's all kinds of ways to get out of the city if she really wanted to without having to run away from a park. But some suggest that Trini used the field trip as a way to cover her running away from home. One of the students actually said, I always felt like Trini planned it and it was her way out, talking about the field trip itself. I wasn't able to find any information about who she might have run away with, though, to be honest with you, or why, but it's entirely possible that she was able to sneak out away during the field trip and start anew. Really is. One of the things I've heard again was the possibility that her brother Bob may have, met up with her at the park, may have found out where they were going and met up with her at the park, and taken her away. Some believe that maybe Trini had gotten pregnant and she was used this opportunity to vanish, to go get an abortion or to go have the baby someplace else and then come back when she had the baby. Again, all theories and ideas, no proof. But it is strongly believed, though, because of several things, that her brother Bob definitely had something to do with Trini's disappearance. And I kind of believe that to a point, too. One of the ideas was that Trini succumbed to the wilderness in the Smokies. It's entirely possible that Trini wandered off, got lost, and ended up succumbing to the elements. The average low temperatures in October in the Smokies is 40.8 degrees Fahrenheit, plenty cold enough for someone to end up with hypothermia. Nights are even often colder. Nighttime gets down in the 30s. There's also damaging winds that are possible, some gusting between 80 and 100 miles an hour. So that's some serious wind, and it gets very, very cold very quickly. So cold weather certainly could have been a reason for Trini's demise. There's also the possibility that Trini got lost and then met up with a predator. That's kind of a gruesome idea, but there's black bears. So here's a little bit about the black bears in the Smokies. Okay, approximately 1,900 black bears live in the Smokies. Some males can reach an excess of 600 pounds come late fall. So these are big boys. Okay, that's plenty enough, large enough to attack and kill a small teenager. Okay. Other animals may pose a danger to human too, including elk, bobcat, steer, and coyote. They did reintroduce elk to the park in the last few years. Now, although I think all the theories are plausible in this case, the one stands out the most to me um, is the idea that she wandered off and succumbed to the forest, um, be it either elements or predators. I also kind of buy the idea that maybe her brother Bob definitely had something to do with her disappearance. Um, Running away is really unlikely. Again, first of all, um, I'm not convinced that this happened. She didn't take any of her belongings, like her purse or cash. Her bank account was never accessed with her savings at all. The students attending the field trip didn't know where they were going again until they got on the bus that day. Had she planned to escape? Would she have just gone along with whatever happened? It's like, oh, okay, we're going to the Smokies. That's great. I think I'll disappear. It just didn't happen that way. Choosing a park like the Great Smoky Mountains National Park to run away is a daunting prospect. Um, Very daunting. If Trenny did run away that day, she would have had to start her entire life over again from scratch, which was possible in the 1970s, but perhaps asking a bit much for a 16-year-old at the time, okay? Many people point to the cigarette butts near Trinity's disappearance and the same brand on the road where her scent vanished as proof that somebody took her. Now we're getting into the Bob thing, possibly, because Bob was a smoker, and he also drank, and there was also that partially drank beer. However, it seemed unlikely to me that an abductor would um, be waiting along the trail that is reasonably popular and busy. So, hey, I'm just going to hang out here. Maybe somebody will come along. It doesn't seem plausible that somebody would be smoking while waiting for the perfect target to cross their path, and would continue smoking while forcing a struggling teenager in the car. I mean, honestly, those are kind of reasonable arguments for why abduction is not really plausible. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? Not really. Furthermore, just because the cigarettes were the same brand does not indicate that they were smoked by the same person, which is true. Data from 1974 shows that 37.1% of US adults smoked. It was very possible that several different people just happened to be smoking the same brand of cigarettes at different places in the park. Unless the bus brand was extremely unusual, I'm not convinced or proven that Trendy was abducted, to be honest with you, unless, of course, like I said, he was somehow related to her brother Bob, which I do lean in that direction somewhat and do believe that Bob possibly could have had something to do with it. I will say that. The fact that the scent trail the tracking dogs picked up on ended at the road does suggest that abduction was possible and is more convincing to me than cigarette butts found around an area. Of course, with so many people in the area that day, all the students on the hike, other hikers, and then searchers, the scent dogs could have just gotten off track following someone else's trail. We'll never know for sure. We really won't. The most plausible explanation is that Trini simply just got lost, and she wandered off in the wrong direction, and uh, it's reported that she was interested in landscaping and horticulture, so it doesn't seem crazy that she might have seen some interesting plant, wandered off the forest to check it out, and then realized she was lost. It's like, oh, look, a pretty plant. Oh, let's go look at it. Wee, wee, wee. Oh, my, I have no idea where I am. And there we are. Um, Trini may have looked up to see the observation tower, Klingman's Dome, which is huge, it's massive, it's easy to see from all over the place, and used that as sort of a guide to walk toward um, the dome, which would explain why the dogs followed her scent to the area below it. Instead of finding the path back to the tower, she might have become lost, perhaps even wandering through the woods and ending up on the road um, that the dogs lost her scent on. From there, anything might have happened to her. It is also possible that Trenny wandered off into the forest and succumbed to other elements or a dangerous animal somewhere out there. People go missing in the national parks all the time. In 2017 alone, there was reported 3,453 people who were reported missing in national parks, according to Search and Rescue dashboard. Short of finding Trinity or her remains, I'm not sure that this case will ever be solved. It's an incredibly sad situation for her family and friends, many of who have passed since this point. Um, but yeah, there have been some updates to the case since her disappearance. Most are not good. Um, April through May of 1977, another search was conducted. About 6 months after Trinity's disappearance. Um, However, they were unable to locate her. Um, in 2000, Robert Gibson Jr. passed away at the age of 42. He never found out what happened to Trini. Trinity's father passed away in 2004 at the age of 67, not knowing whatever happened to his daughter. Trinity's sister Tina passed away at the age of 54 in 2016. Like the other family members, never found out what happened to Trini. So, as of 2023, the disappearance of Trenny Gibson is still classified as a missing person case. At the time of her disappearance, Trenny was 5'3" and weighed approximately 115 pounds because they're very small and had long brown hair and green or brown eyes. I want to go back and I want to look at a couple of things. So let's talk again about Kevin Bowman for a moment. He was a student at Bearden High School who, on the evening of October the 11th, 1975, almost a year to the day before Trinity's disappearance, Kevin was prowling around the Gibson's front lawn. Hope Gibson heard the noise, got a gun, and ended up shooting Kevin in the foot. Again, Kevin knew Robert Simpson Jr. He claimed that they were looking for Robert or whatever. He also claimed that Trenny left that window open for him on several occasions so they could hook up. So, yeah. Calvin was arrested and tried and sentenced to time in correctional institution. Okay, he allegedly made threats to kill Trenny once he got out. Some students claim that they had noticed Calvin following the bus to the mountains that day by car. Again, unless he borrowed Bob's car, Calvin got no car. So how was he driving around? Um, Frank Hall, Bearden's high school principal, was like, dude was in class. He was at school all day. It was not him that followed the bus. Um, and none of the students were aware of the destination of the bus prior to departure anyway. So why was he going to be following a bus around? He didn't even know where it was going. Um, a little bit about Robert Simpson Bob, Trenny's older brother. Actually, Bob, no, scratch that. Robert, there's too many friggin' Roberts in the story. Robert Simpson, who was Trenny's older brother's friend. There we go. How's that? Um, he had a car, and he and Trenny often went for short rides together to Westtown Mall and other places. It was said that Robert was very fond of Trenny, but it wasn't known if they were ever a couple. Um, I get that Trenny liked Robert Simpson, but just didn't dig him that way. She liked him as a friend. Trini had shared a seat with Robert on the bus on the way to the park that day, like we said before. She was also wearing his brown plaid CPO jacket when she disappeared. He realized she was cold, and so Robert Simpson gave her his jacket to wear. Um, it was on the trip, it was Robert that she spent most of the time with. And after she left his company to return the bus, he claimed that he had gone tracking a bear. Stupid, stupid claim, but there you go. Later, some of the students had told Mr. Gibson that Trini's hair comb was found in Robert's car. Trini was known never to be without the comb. She carried it in her right hip pocket of her jeans. There was no record that this was ever investigated further. On two occasions when the Gibsons were in park searching for Trenny, Robert came to the residence and told Tina Gibson, Trenny's younger sister, that if Kevin Bowman has Trenny, he will kill her. If he doesn't have her, I think she may have ran off with some horny hitchhiker. His words, exactly. So Robert Simpson was kind of a shady character, but his dad was also like a district attorney or something like that. So his dad counseled him a lot about what to say, what not to say, and all that kind of stuff to keep him out of trouble. So there was that. Um, there's a couple of things that come to mind with me as I wrap this up today. Um, First of all, the shady characters. Um, Calvin Bowman, definitely shady. Um, it appears that Trini may have been doing the deed with him at one point. We don't know, but I mean, there's speculation and there's confirmation from Calvin that yeah, that happened. Um, Calvin was also friends with Bob Gibson, Trini's older brother. Um, Trini was very close to her older brother. Uh, Her older brother was home from the military on leave when Trenny disappeared, which is very curious and interesting. Bob also possessed a car and had access to Trenny, so it's very possible that he may have somehow devised a plan to do something with Trenny for whatever reason. Robert Simpson, also Bob's friend, kind of had a crush on Trenny, was a little creepy, uh, definitely overshot his boundaries in a lot of ways. Like he was going to the house, the Gibson house at one point, and screening phone calls and making statements on behalf of the family and so forth. You know, kind of like he was in charge to the point where the family finally told him to stop doing that. It was inappropriate. Um, and Simpson had a car. There's just a lot of things about Simpson that made him kind of suspect in a lot of ways. So, um, those three in particular, um, and then of course, let's talk for a minute about the teacher. So, one of the things that I did not mention is that um, Mr. Dunlap, the teacher, uh, took Trinny's disappearance very seriously. He actually kind of went through a nervous breakdown. Eventually, even um, his marriage failed, even as a result of that. Uh, when people have tried to reach out to Mr. Dunlop to talk to him about Trinny's disappearance since the whole thing happened, and he moved off to Washington. I understand he did eventually come back to Knoxville, but he moved off to Washington State at one point to just get away. Um, but he took it things very hard, and he was also very suspected for a period of time because honestly it was kind of shady. He just like up and took these 40 kids off to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park uh, as a one man chaperone, um, without hesitation. And, these days that wouldn't fly. Like you would have to have, you know, permission slips and blah, 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 and all this. Like then, not so much so, but now you would. Well, Mr. Dunlop was cleared. There was a rumor that Trenny had gotten to a spat with Mr. Dunlap the week of the trip, but that's not really anything that's been cleared up or clarified either. Um, and like I said, the authorities cleared the teacher of all connections to it. So, four guys that were shady and suspected of being involved. To this day, nothing has come of that. I do understand that Robert Simpson passed from complications to COVID somewhere around 2020. So he is no longer here either. Kevin Bowman recently, sure exactly, looked this up earlier, but Kevin Bowman did pass already too. Calvin. Um, he passed, get this, August the 28th, 2024. He was surrounded by friends by his family. Everyone knew him as an excellent cook and grill cook, especially with his ribs. Cool guy and construction worker. Um, Calvin was born April the 17th, 1959, to Reverend Elijah Sr. and Audrey Bowman. Um, they preceded him in death, along with his grandparents, William and Lenny Bowman, John Sr., and Minnie V. Admonson, and a son named Brian. Um, so, yeah, Calvin passed in August of 2024. So the majority of people involved with all of this, um, most of the school, the most of the kids that were in that class have all passed. They're all older now. Trenny would be around 64 years old now if she were still alive. Um, so, with all that said, there's just no, I mean, there's a lot of speculation what happened with Trini, but there is no concrete evidence of anything um, that pinpoints an answer, and we may never know. It's very possible that Trini's remains are somewhere on in the park still. There are people who investigate Trini's disappearance quite in depth who believe that she is still in the park and that she passed away in the park, uh, and that her remains have just never been found. Unfortunately, unless her remains are ever found, we'll never know. Um, I would like to take a moment. Let me look this up again right quick because I forgot. Um, um, we're gonna like just kind of go through the the top five missing persons in the Great Smoky Mountain. Um, Dennis Lloyd Martin disappeared on June the 14th, 1969, at Spencer Field in the park. Extensive search efforts have never found a trace of him. Dennis Martin was the little boy who disappeared, and that was quite a story for another time. William Bradford Bishop Jr. disappeared on March 1976. His car was found in the Elkmont area of the park. More than 2 weeks later, he was added to the FBI's most wanted list in 2014. Very interesting story. Christopher Lee Cessna, reported missing by family members on April the 27th, 2011. Park officials found his 2009 Audi at the Newfound Gap parking area. And then there's Thelma Pauline Polly Middleton. Middleton disappeared in the Deep Creek area of the park on September 25th, 1981. She was hiking with two friends when she reportedly walked over the hill and Out of You and Vanished. And then, of course, Trenny Gibson. And, National Park Service has a list of 25 cold cases on its website, including 4 persons missing from the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So again, Dennis Lloyd Martin, William Bradford Bishop, Christopher Lee Cessna, Thelma Pauline Middleton, and Trenny Gibson, the top big 5 all-time missing person cases from the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And I want to cover Dennis and Thelma in upcoming episodes. So look forward to that. Meanwhile, stay safe. I'm not discouraging you from going to the national parks, but put your common sense on and put your thinking cap on when you go there. Don't go alone. Stay on the trails. Abide by the rules and have a safe trip on the way. Don't drive like a maniac. Don't act like an ass. Real simple. Anyway, I love you guys. And as always, may your journey always be magical.